Today on the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast, we chat with the adventurous Josh McLean, a social worker and bush adventure therapy facilitator who also brings his therapy dog Myrtle along with him on some of those adventures. Get comfortable and let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode with the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast. Today we've got Josh McLean. Is that how I say your last name, Josh?
Yep, that's right. McLean.
Josh
Yep.
McLean with us today, and Sam, of course.
Hello.
Hello. So Josh, how about we just kick off with you introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Josh McLean. I work with a small family owned and operated business here in Geelong called Geelong Adventure Specialists. My background started in public health, in alcohol and other drug prevention programs, particularly for youth in rural Victoria. And sort of from that, I ended up in a second master's degree doing social work because I really wanted to be on the front line working face to face with the people that I was supporting. And through that, I fell into adventure therapy. So being outdoors and in nature and my love of dogs, and then hearing about this awesome Therapy Dogs Australia clinical course was just a perfect storm. I never thought all of these worlds would come together, working outdoors in a therapeutic capacity, but designing programs that integrate dogs into, the therapeutic practice. And I'm excited to join you both today and talk to that. And I've been in this space for 4 years full time, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down. It's actually it's actually been getting crazier. And the demand for the work, has just been growing. So excited to join you both today.
That does not surprise me at all, Josh, that it's so popular because, first of all, I think a lot of our listeners will be thinking, and so how do I become an adventure therapist? How do I hang out with
Sounds
my
like the dream
clients
job.
outdoors doing stuff? And I think it's going to be like, I don't know much about what you do yet, but the crossover between the animal therapies and adventure therapy stuff, I think, is going to be pretty, make a lot of sense because we're doing so much experiential stuff, like there's so much that we aren't just sitting around talking about stuff because a lot of our clients can't do that or don't know how to do that yet or don't enjoy doing that or insert reason here. So I'm pretty keen.
How did you hear about us, Josh?
I think just searching online and sort of shopping around to find what would be a good fit for exactly what you're describing, Sam, is how do those worlds come together? And I think looking at your clinical course and how it sort of really fitted in with the social work or the allied health lens, that targeted therapeutic work. But then going through what you were offering, and it just all seemed to gel really, really nicely. I like the interdisciplinary kind of approach that Therapy Dogs Australia has. It hasn't really cornered itself as a particular type. So just online chatting to Sam, and it was just really suited to what work I'm doing down here.
When did that all happen too?
Yeah, I was going to say, when was that, Josh? It was over a year ago.
Yeah, no, it's a couple of years ago now, I think. Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah, it really does. So I'm already reassessing the dogs and going through the process with my second dog, just so that I can, juggle that, rather than having one dog out for an entire day, so I can switch them over if I need to.
Yeah.
And for the listeners, what dogs do you have, Josh? What therapy dogs?
It's a bit of a surprise when people hear what type of dogs they are. They're thinking, oh, he's got Kelpies, he's got Collies or something. they're two whippets. So if you don't know what a whippet is, it's not a greyhound, and it's not. Oh, there was one. It's in between an Iggy or an Italian greyhound and a full greyhound. So yeah,
Ridiculous dogs.
I know
Ridiculous.
I know the oldest one is nicknamed Weasel Tick, and the younger one is Land Shark, and they they're really the funniest dogs to work with because um they're very hyperactive for like a short period,
Yeah.
and then they literally just crash and then just sleep. And actually with the client groups that I typically work with, that rhythm actually works really well.
Yeah.
Because I work a lot with adolescents and adult men, and typically on the spectrum or neurodiverse. So usually there's a big spurt of energy and then there's a bit of a crash, and it just seems to work really, really well with these two. So
I feel like they've got like really in your face sort of personalities, like they just got a lot of charisma to them, those little dogs. Is that your experience?
yeah, I think people often, I think, assume that they're quite timid, and the older one, it's interesting, they have very different personalities. So the older one, she is quite reserved and takes a bit of getting used to. She won't just immediately come up to you or get in your lap, and particularly where there's trauma or sensory processing sort of limitations, it can be really gentle. And I mean, you heard a bark before, but typically they don't really bark. I think they know that I'm on a podcast and they just want to say hello. But I've got but Myrtle's just come up to me now, and she's saying hello. She's just giving me a little nuzzle in the leg.
Dougie's actually doing the exact same thing to me right now.
I saw Dougie come in. I saw his big fluffy tail.
I'm sure, I don't know, the listener might want to see. There we go.
Oh, hello.
There she is. Yeah.
Hello. Hello, puppy dog. What are you
So
doing?
cute.
All right, I'll let you down. There you go. Yep. So yes, so yeah, I got a surprise with using whippets because I grew up with a golden retriever and a labradoodle, and so yeah, whippets have been really great for the work that I've been doing.
I actually think I heard a fun fact about whippets that they sleep the most out of any breed, or like, yeah, one of the biggest sleepers in the day. Actually, that just came back to me.
I wouldn't be surprised. I always joke that they're the cats of the dog world.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I think greyhounds and Italian greyhounds are similar. Like I think they're all fairly similar in that they're described as quite lazy, and then once they get the zoomies, they're ridiculous. Like, ridiculous.
Yeah, I always get the joke of like, oh, you'll never catch up to her, from the other dogs, and my two are just like zoom,
zooming past.
Yeah, they take zoomies very, very seriously. So I have to run them like every day. So I guess just to give the listener a bit of an idea of maybe a day in the life of a therapy dog adventure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
So because they are prone to zoomies, I do take them typically for a walk or a run in the morning. So they'll jump in the car before brekkie, and then we head up and go for a run or a walk. And that just sort of helps, get their energy out for the day so that they're relatively calm. And then depending on what job I have, typically the therapy dog adventures, I've got some photos that I can share my screen and show what that looks like. But typically it's an intentional dog walk, but with we'd go out to remote locations, typically transporting with the participant or client in the vehicle. So that's probably where it becomes unique, where that adventure aspect comes in. it's not just walking out of a clinic,
Mm.
here in Geelong, because we do like mountain biking, rock climbing, bushwalking, other activities as well. So with certain activities, like I wouldn't mountain bike and take the dog with that. That's just the safety
Yeah.
there,
Mm-hmm.
isn't um, available. So typically it'll be walking like on a remote trail that's dog friendly. That's also another limitation in this country is national parks.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Oh,
that.
it's tough. Yeah.
And that's really frustrating. That does limit things, but there are plenty of walks available. But typically a lot of the places that we do work are in uh, national parks. So because of the PAT test and maybe the viewer knows the difference between a therapy dog and a assistance dog.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn all that in the clinical course.
Mm-hmm.
But but yeah, because they don't have a PAT test, it means that they can't go into the national park. Maybe that'll change as policies and that realize the value of dogs.
Mm.
And I've noticed the main thing that they provide when we're on these adventures is that transition from home or school or wherever the person is, they're about to come on this adventure, and the dogs do such a better job than I do at calming and regulating.
Yeah.
And transitions can be quite overwhelming. I mean, for anyone experiencing acute mental health or other
Mm.
challenges, and it also takes the pressure off of, oh, I'm going on this adventure and it's all about me, but then the dog acts as like it's also about this other
Mm.
being here that we are on the adventure together with, and it's an equalizer. It just really helps to, yeah, dispel a lot of, anxiety and pressure that people might be feeling accessing the type of
Mm.
therapy that I offer. And so if I took every request for the dogs, I think the dogs would be coming everywhere with me all the time.
No doubt.
But
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
but I'm trying as quickly as I can to get the younger dog through the course. And we just passed the temperament assessment stuff the other day, and
Awesome.
um
Just gotta
yeah,
get the videos in.
I know. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what if you've just trying to think of what questions you might have around.
Well, I was just gonna comment that so I've got a conservation park just like next to my house, and there's no dogs allowed in there for the same reason, but it's because of because it's a koala conservation area. Apparently it freaks the koalas out if the dog's scent is on the ground, but there are dingoes living in there as well, so I don't know, but we do have, so we can ride our horses in there, and I wish that the dogs could come because they could just come for a trail with us because I can go out the back gate, but the point I was going to make is there are so many people with dogs in there doing the wrong thing.
Oh, really?
And I think that's where, because I get frustrated because I don't take the dogs in there because my understanding is it's all about the koalas or whatever. So I'm like, try not to annoy them. But I really, really wish I could. And I sometimes like, maybe I could just sneak them in there. But then I'm like, oh, but the koalas, So regularly we come across people in there with their dogs and they're off lead, and whether the dog's under control or not, they're not even supposed to be in there, let alone off lead. So I think there is a big group of people that wreck it for everyone else. Like if you could be trusted to do the right thing with dogs in there, I reckon it'd be a lot easier. Like if people could be trusted to stick on the paths and stuff like that, because they don't, they just do whatever. And I think it causes problems for the wildlife. But yeah, it's very annoying. It's frustrating for us too. And I did speak to someone. So like we just went to Washpool National Park. We went for a riding holiday down there. It's in Glen Innes, New South Wales. And yeah, like we couldn't take the dogs because it's a national park. Again, I get it. Like I do get it. But yeah, it sucks when you restricted in what you can and can't do. But
Yeah, and I totally understand the wildlife aspect and promoting wildlife, and it probably is, just a minority that unfortunately ruins it for the majority with, recall and dogs that just take off into the bush and are
Recall,
chasing.
yes.
Um,
Oh yeah.
and so I do understand it for that perspective, but I do think that there probably will be a demand because I do see a lot of dog owners that are just disregarding, the signs. And even when I'm out with clients and they're like, oh, but they've got their dog off lead and are throwing the ball, why can't we do that? And it's like, well, I'm also, representing an organization and I'm role modeling, the fact that there are rules and regulations around dog use. And so it is challenging. So we will typically visit a dog park or an oval or somewhere that I know well, that I know that it's going to be safe to take the dogs. Typically I avoid dog parks, just
Same.
and it's taken a while because about the socializing aspect, but then realizing, there are other ways to socialize the dogs. And so we'll find a place, typically built into the adventure session. So the adventure session might be 2 to 3 hours typically. And then within that, we will stop at a dog park because, it does irritate the dogs when they like to be able to be off lead and sniff around, chase a ball. One of them's very food driven, the younger one. The older one's love language is ball throwing and obstacle courses. So
that works so well in adventure activities.
Bless.
Yeah. So it is a really interesting space because even the space I work in as an outdoor social worker or outdoor therapist, that's still quite an emerging field of practice. Although, accessing the outdoors for better health is something that humans have done forever. And dogs are the oldest, like, domesticated animal, for humans.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it just really makes sense, that kind of marriage of these three fields. And I think more some research in this area would be amazing, just to see what kind of outcomes. I mean, I can only provide anecdotal feedback, which is that clients really feel that the dog adds another really important element to their support and therapeutic experience, and it helps them to calm down. I noticed their motivation is increased by having a dog present. And I noticed that even the client's body language is more open. As soon as they see the dog, not that they probably don't enjoy seeing me, but the dog definitely is more exciting to interact with.
Always.
Yeah.
Yes. They will always be the celebrity.
Yeah. So,
Josh, I was talking to someone, we just ran another Wild at Heart, which is my equine therapy training arm, another workshop. And I was talking so we were having a conversation about just how much we find like purposeful task stuff really motivating for our client groups. And I wonder, do you think taking the dog, do your clients or participants, do you think they might see that as, well, we're doing this for Myrtle, like we're taking Myrtle out so that Myrtle can go and have fun, and maybe it just gives another element to, this isn't all just about me and because I've got mental health issues and I can't get my shit together, and so now I'm on this organized, structured adventure thing because I can't leave the house by myself or whatever it is. I've got no friends, and so now my therapist's got to take me bushwalking, like whatever might be associated with that. Like, because I do a lot of task and talk, I've been calling it task and talk stuff, where even my kids, like, even if I'm like, we got to check the fences, and we just go for a walk around the boundary and check the fences, it just makes such a big difference. Like, these are kids that wouldn't normally say anything to me or anyone else or whatever, but there's just something about, like, okay, we'll just walk in the boundary and making sure the fences are all still on or whatever. It just seems to, I don't know, make a difference.
I imagine it would take the pressure off, like you said, like it's not a big focus on them. It's something else outside of them that helps them relax.
Yeah, I feel like there must be something of that to it.
Yeah, 100%. Like you're kind of describing the mechanisms of change in bush adventure therapy or outdoor therapy, is that like integration of the ecological domain into the biopsychosocial model of health, which has been the dominant model of health and is still very popular, but it's 40 years old. Like it's sort of running its course, and now, these ecological factors are coming in. Like equine therapy is a great example, is, fitting under that outdoor health kind of banner, and then broader, you go to animal assisted therapy, and then, broader again, you're sort of back to that eco domain. How do we bring the ecological into the way that we work? The biopsychosocial model is fantastic, the biological being, say, the use of biomedicines, the prescription medications, the psychological, using our psychological strategies, and then the social elements might be, running groups or, being in public places, the social dimension, and then, the ecological, going as simple as going for a walk to check the fences, and, connection to more than the human, because therapy, like, typically therapy's just been so individual focused, and that's still important, but then it's not bringing, tapping into all those other tools, like, the natural environment to help facilitate those changes, like, noticing that the client's more relaxed when you're not just focusing on, you've got a problem, I'm the expert and I'm here to fix you.
Yeah.
It's hey, we're walking alongside each other here, and like when we go for a bushwalk, and or even a multi-day hike, for example, like I'm going through all of the challenges that this other person's going through. Like, if we get rained on, I'm wet.
I'm getting wet as well.
Yeah, and like, oh, there's no toilets. Like, I have to go out and use the bush,
Bushway.
Yeah. And so, it's sort of, I think it's those everyday things like checking fences or feeding the animals, and it does remove that focus on the individual. And I think that's anti-oppressive practice within the social work world, is really working alongside people that, I'm just as much on a journey as somebody else, and it's a doing with, not a doing to. And I think that shift in the dynamic makes it so much more accessible to the people that are perhaps maybe more resistant to therapy, like particularly young people, neurodiverse people as well. It can be really confronting to just sit there on a couch in front of someone and saying, okay, what's going on? And it's like,
yeah.
And
they're not in the mood. Like, they don't access those areas of their brain that easily. And then I'm finding when it's a structured time and day, like, all right, 3:00 on Tuesday afternoon, you're going to talk about all your thoughts and feelings, like, I just don't know if that's working for them. Some people it really does, and they've figured that model out, and that's good. But a lot of these kids, like, you'll talk to them and they're not tapping into unless something just happened to them on the way to the clinic, and they can be like, oh, you like this, blah, blah, you
To
know.
put them in the right space for it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Otherwise, if they've like just had a like pretty good day or whatever, and they rock up and you're like trying to talk to them about all this stuff, I find they're really stuck on like they've got nothing to
Yeah.
they've got nothing to talk about, they've got nothing to bring up. And some of them even say like, but I'm in a good mood, like, you know, so I don't really want to talk about that shit because I'm in a good mood,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
totally, I hate talking about stuff when like, so I don't like people asking me questions and things. I'm like, oh girl, like just leave me alone. Like I hate it. So I really, whereas when I'm in the mood to talk, I would talk for like 8 hours and that'd be so fine. So I really get it. But I think the task and talk thing, because I've been telling parents for many years, you know, because kids get in the car and they're like, how was your day? And the kids are like, fine. And then that's the end of the conversation. And the parents like, they don't tell me anything. I'm like, well, they're not going to tell you then. You know, they're still processing everything and they're exhausted and all those things. But when they talk to you the most is when you know, 20 minutes into the drive and you've been, you know, sitting there and they just start to chat, or, you know, it's after dinner or you're making dinner or something like that and they wander out and you know, and then there's something that if they're doing something with you and they've just got you in that one spot for a bit, like it's like they can kind of take the opportunity to start a conversation because it's like, oh well, mum's hanging out the washing anyway, so you know, like now I might just mention whatever or bring something up now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And I think that's across the board really that I've noticed, no matter what presentation I've had with the people that I work with. And I've really been fortunate to work with such a diverse range. Like I work with foster kids transitioning back to their biological parents. I've
Wow.
worked with adults with like various types of schizophrenia, like treatment resistant schizophrenia. Like this is all using the um, Myrtle predominantly. Twiggy is on her way.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, you know, ASD, autism, you know, usually level 2, high functioning, complex trauma, um, you know, and I have all my psychological strategies that I use, like narrative therapy, ACT, CBT, MICBT, you know, all the T's, you know, and you know, the tools and the cognitive assessment tools and uh, you know, but exactly what you're saying, Sam, they rely on they rely on this part of the brain to be online, which
Mm,
often if you're going through a crisis or a challenging period of your life,
mm,
or you have a mental disability disorder, um, that window where that part of the cognitive part of the brain that's online is, you know, can be very small. And to
mhm,
schedule that in and be like, okay, this Tuesday at 4 p.m. after school, you're going to be ready to go. And I've got my this tool, this tool, and this tool. And, you know, it's really letting these people down because it's not meeting them where they're at. And I think
mm,
that's where the use of Myrtle in my sessions just really you know, it helps to increase the likelihood of that window opening, but at the same time, a lot of the work that I do is like from the bottom up, is the sensory motor type work, which is um, you know, doing by role modeling, so co-regulating what kind of state am I in.
mm.
And the dogs, you know, I know they're not horses, even though whippets have irregular heartbeats like a horse, um, but I do notice my state tends to resonate with what the dogs are doing as well,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
I find really, really fascinating. Um, but yeah, that's that co-regulation of like calming myself and uh, you know, breathing before meeting the person I'm working with. And the dog is sort of like a bit of a barometer like of where I'm at, also helps. And yeah, so that's sort of why I do a lot of the work that I do, because yeah, those windows for those cognitive tools, I think, is part of what's changing a lot in the therapeutic space. Is yes, that's important, but there's also all of these other mechanisms that can be brought into your therapeutic practice, such as yeah, the use of the dogs in this space.
I'd love, Josh, if you could walk us through a few examples of, you know, the sessions that you do and the adventures that you go on, and
Yeah,
how Myrtle kind of is a part of that.
yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering if I could maybe bring up a photo. Would that be possible?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I thought that
Absolutely.
might. Let me just find one, and then I'll share my screen just to give the viewer an idea of what
You
a
got screen
session looks like.
sharing turned
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. Oh, you just have to.
Yeah, Max, you got to
Oh, do
turn
you need
screen sharing
permission?
on. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought maybe a word pictures say 1,000 words. There we go. Yeah. I
It
can.
says all participants.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that'll work now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah. So
That's
there we.
Myrtle.
Yep. That's Myrtle
Oh
in
my
action.
gosh.
Yeah.
Just doing some sick obstacle coursework.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And you know, I want to keep the information de-identified, so I'll just speak very generally. I'll sort of blend in
Of
multiple case
course.
studies, but typically working with adolescent youth where they might be at risk of homelessness, or you know, have suffered a lot of complex trauma. And you know, in this case, you know, building empathy and care of another can really help repair, you know, maybe the care that the young person didn't experience, or even an adult didn't experience as a child.
Absolutely.
And that has really, like, even telling you about this, it really hits me, you know, really in all the feelings, you know, because
Mm.
it's so beautiful, because you know, maybe they've been exposed to family violence, maybe they've been abused themselves, and to not feel worthy of the care of another, and then to be able to demonstrate that care and empathy towards an animal and feel that bond, I think is just so powerful. You know, something that
Mm.
you know, I feel really privileged to be able to witness. And you know, because to get to this moment that you're seeing on camera there, you know, it may happen first session, but typically it's, you know, you have to scaffold those experiences in. I'll see.
I definitely find that I don't get the opportunity to work with a lot of trauma specifically, but obviously like the kids I work with have had trauma, things like that. And some of them, yeah, that like neglect or, you know, worthlessness and things like that. And just not being able to look after themselves too. So like there's a barrier of like functional capacity to look after themselves in a nurturing way versus also modeling maybe from parents and caregivers, and also you know, that mental health side, that low mood sort of thing as well. But I find, yeah, doing some nurturing of the animals, it really helps to unlock that, like really gives just so much to that space, and being able to then, yeah, get through that. So we'll do things like bathing horses and stuff, you know, and it's just like amazing what a difference it can make. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And to give, so I know we spoke earlier about the national parks thing, but there are still, I don't know if you can see this photo looking out.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly what you were saying, Sam, that caring for. So some of those activities might look like, so on this walk, it was quite a warm day, not hot enough to not run the session, but it would have been close to 30 degrees. And so we had water, and it was really important to stop and give Myrtle water. Is she okay? Do we need to go into the shade? And this young person got to experience that, checking in, how is she feeling? What are you noticing? And it can be sometimes easier to notice what the animal's noticing. And then it's like, well, what are you noticing in yourself? And it sort of like, can translate to monitoring self, because often just looking at your own state of being can be quite overwhelming, particularly for people experiencing trauma. And this is Myrtle doing her favorite activity, although she hurt her foot recently, so she's resting at the moment, but her favorite activity is very much the ball throwing. She will constantly bring me toys in the house.
Cute.
And
So handy.
Yeah, you can see a foot here. I don't have any identifiable pictures of clients just for confidentiality, but yeah, so there's ball throwing. So
fun.
indoor rock climbing. Just
Got a
to
little jacket.
just to show it's not all outdoors. I do some indoor stuff as well.
What's the sort of process with Myrtle with the indoor rock climbing? Like, how does she sort of participate?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So locals would typically bring their dogs in, and they wouldn't be therapy dogs, but I guess there was this sort of understanding, if your dog's well behaved, you can bring your dog. And having done all the therapy dog Australia training and all, and continuing that, Myrtle's really great. And they even set up a climbing little carabiner thing for a dog station with a little poster.
Oh my goodness.
After I started bringing her in, and then they were totally fine with her being on the human on the bean bags that
That's awesome.
So good.
So it's really interesting because it's almost an education or consciousness raising piece in the community about therapy dogs and how they can support people to access these activities. And so yeah, here she was really helping with the regulation in between the climbing and the falling.
Because rock climbing's hard. You do need to have a rest between climbs.
Such a workout.
Yeah, absolutely. So and even so, definitely with the down regulating, but even with up regulating, like getting the energy going. Like for example, you see here, we're on a bushwalk going up the hill, and Myrtle's very much on a mission because I think there was rabbits on this track. So and
Right.
rabbits to a sight hound. I mean, I think you can have the best recall in the world, but I definitely have her on a lead.
Just in case.
Absolutely.
And then the last photo is a very happy dog that she's got her harness on, and you can't see there, but I've got like a clip that goes onto the harness so it's not on her neck, and then she's secure in there. And I don't know if you can see, but in the back I have a cage.
Yeah.
So I've got a crate in the back that's removable in case I need to isolate her during the session. That was sort of a big part of my risk assessment and management was, okay, how, if I'm out with a participant and it doesn't become safe anymore for the dog or the participant with the dog, how do I manage that? And so the best way I could manage that is by having a sealed off area in the vehicle with a crate so that I could separate her. And thankfully in nearly 2 years that I've been doing this, I haven't had to use the crate once, which is amazing.
That's great. It's great though, that it's there if you need it, and it's wonderful you don't need to use it.
Absolutely. You want to be over prepared than under prepared, and it would be a nightmare. Like, that was one of the things I was going to ask you about as well, Josh, is logistically, it could be a nightmare if you end up in the middle of a 2 or 3 hour booking, and for whatever reason it's not going to plan in whatever way. What a nightmare.
Yeah, that's right. And that was part of my and we covered that in the courses. We had to look at our own context and how were we going to manage, particularly being in a remote location. Like, I carry a comprehensive dog first aid kit and extra water. I even have a portable sleeping bag for the dog if it needs extra warmth.
That's awesome.
So it took a little bit of a transition, because I don't know. I know other practitioners that use their dog, but I'm not sure if they've gone to this level. Like, I've basically applied the same risk management that I would apply if we were running an outdoor activity. So understanding, the first aid requirements, because I'm not going to be very close to a vet. And what if the dog, for whatever reason is off lead, and, they're thin skinned, the whippets. So, if it cut itself open, can I actually manage that? And so, yeah, it's been going incredibly well. And I don't know if there's anyone listening to this going, therapy dog adventures. That's my cup of tea. I don't know.
100%. 100%.
Yes.
So, or if I've given even enough of an idea of what a session looks like, I'd be keen to throw it back to you both if you've got.
Yeah. So I think, one of my things, I have a hard enough time keeping things safe and under control on the farm, because I'm working with young people. I only bring certain presentations on the farm, the ones that I feel like I can keep them safe. So like that would be like flight risk and things like that. So is that something that you need to do? Do you screen clients? Like, how do you choose who's suitable for adventure therapy? Because I guess a lot of people would be thinking, like, some of the clients that we see in rooms, it's easy to get, like, some clinics have got distress buttons, like
Yeah,
a bit of an oh shit button.
Yeah, no, we don't have one of those buttons. So well, the closest thing we have to one of those oh shit buttons is a what's called a PLB, or an EPIRB, which is a personal locator beacon.
Okay.
That we actually run through. That's another. It's such an important part of it, because I think most clinicians, like, if they're thinking, oh, I'd really love to take my dog, but I would love to take my dog to X park, or Y reserve, or whatever. But there's no mobile reception. It's quite remote. Well, having a personal locator beacon, I actually run through the training multiple times when you're working with the client on how to activate it. And it basically has a pop-out antenna, and they push a red button, and all emergency services are able to locate you within the meter. Like, they can get to you. And
why is this the first I'm ever hearing of this device?
I didn't
Yeah.
I want one.
What?
It's like a green device, and I could maybe you could post a link or something, but basically I think they even sell them at Anaconda. They might have a subscription with them, but if you are working in remote locations, just that added layer of security to know, if you fall over and your client doesn't have a mobile phone, they can't access yours. They can literally just flick this antenna up, push the red button, and emergency services will arrive if you're unconscious, particularly if you're going to work one-on-one,
Yeah.
in a rural
Like you get bitten
location.
by a snake or fall off a cliff.
Yeah,
And then you've got a dog and a client.
yeah,
Just like, oh no, poor Josh.
yeah. Well, that's right. Even if you are conscious
Oh my
and
God.
you have to activate it, I can laugh about it because I've been fortunate that it hasn't happened, but it does. I do have days where I'm like, wow, this is actually, like there is definitely
I
real
have days
risk.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like maybe with the horses, you're like, wow,
Yeah.
this is a really big animal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, we
Mhm.
have a lot of poisonous animals in the bush.
We
And,
do.
and if something
do.
happened to my dog or
Mhm.
myself and my phone's not working, sometimes, well, phones these days go flat, and if you use GPS, and I use a map system to navigate sometimes, and it just drains the battery. Maybe the battery pack, I typically take a secondary battery pack, but just that added layer,
Mm.
flicking the antenna up. But in terms of your bigger question about risk assessment and, um, you know, it really, each session is individually tailored to the unique needs of each client. And
Mhm.
and I do really want to say that when we talk about adventure, I know there's probably stigma around adventure being quite able-bodied, fit, and that, but an adventure could literally be rocking up with Myrtle to somebody's house and just leaving the front door and doing a walk around the block could be an
Yeah.
adventure for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I did want to just make that clear to viewers if they're thinking, oh, I'm not going to be driving, 500 kilometers a week doing, you know,
Yeah.
big walks. But yeah, and then part of the risk assessment is checking in with the person. Have you absconded, like, run away? Have you, uh, you know, like particularly around self-harm, harm to other, um, and there'll often be a checking in with the services or a parent or caregiver if they're under the age of 18, just to get a real sense of who you're working with. Because yeah, I don't have a button. I can't just jump outside the door and say, hey, can you assist me here? It's like,
Yeah.
so what will typically happen is you'll arrange a safe, like when I say safe, it's a location that the person you're going to work with identifies as a safe location to meet and have a talk, particularly outdoors. If that's where I'm going to be working outdoors, we might meet in a local park, which we call a green space, or a blue space might be near the beach. Another layer is I have to do my community surf lifesaving every year in case I have to go into the drink to get a person or a dog out of the water. So probably not the dog, because whippets aren't really prone like Labradors or whatever to get in there. Uh, but yeah, say if you're working in a green space, you might meet for an hour session to do an initial assessment, just to say, and I'll have photos of the different activities and I'll talk them through what the session will look like, and then it will be
That's cool.
decided afterwards, yep, let's give it a go, and then we'll co-design the session. Do you want the dog involved? Do you not want the dog involved? They'll meet the dog. Does it feel like, from my perspective, is this a safe to proceed? And then from there, the dog will either be involved or not involved. I mean, if I clearly see whale eyes and licking, and I'm like, oh, you know, Myrtle's having a rest this week, and so
Yeah.
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 Were there any things
lots to think about.
any elements that you didn't expect were going to be something that you needed to deal with when you brought Myrtle into the adventures? Was there anything unexpected for you?
Well, I guess it's just a practical thing, I mean, all of the things that I mentioned weren't really that surprising. I kind of knew that that was going to happen, but I think what's uh sort of I guess it's an ongoing challenge is that because it isn't really understood, I think, the just how beneficial therapy dogs are in this space. I think it's undervalued, and I think that
Mm.
it's actually undervalued in terms of even remuneration as a service. And I
Mm.
think because I would get paid just the same if I just went and did the adventure therapy and I just forgot about doing the dog
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And
Same.
and that would be easier on my end because I'd be like, great,
Absolutely.
you guys stay home
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's unfortunate because I see so much potential and it's really great to have passion and run your business on passion, but I think at the end of the day it also has to support the practitioner and also
Mm.
the dogs as well. And there's a lot that goes in behind the scenes. I mean, I
Yeah.
make it sound really straightforward, but there's a lot of extra hours involved with
Mm-hmm.
um, it's not just, oh, I'm bringing my pet along to work. I wish it was that simple, but
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
not. So, so I think that's probably why I jump onto podcasts and work in the advocacy space and, promoting this stuff so that people can understand the value so that if they do see, oh, wow, that's, a bit more money that they see, well, actually, there's like a whole other job going on top of the job.
Mm.
Like, so um, I'm hoping that, listeners that maybe are interested in this sort of work or the work that you are both doing with Therapy Dogs Australia, that, people are really seeing the value in that because it is there and, it's growing, which is exciting.
It is exciting, but it is expensive. Like we've got people that have got, like you're about to find out, when you got two dogs that you've got to keep going and reassessing every year,
Mm,
it's starts to add up. Like we've got a couple of teams that have got three dogs, so the costs like of reassessment every year, but even keeping up their insurances, feeding them properly, you've got to,
Supplements and, joint
yep,
support stuff.
you got to do stuff to your car, like that sort of
mm,
thing. Like my car just got the canopy fixed up. It's astronomical what
Oh,
I'm paying to have the canopy set up for the dogs to be in it comfortably. Like it's just stuff like that you go, oh, this is an extra cost. And maybe I would have incurred that cost anyway, because, would have had dogs anyway. But
yeah,
it is certainly something I think to consider that, it costs a lot of time and money. And there's a lot of, even as you talking about getting prepared for these trips and stuff, I'm like, man, it's so much cognitive energy like involved in planning these sessions. Like
yeah,
that's a lot to have to go through. And I think sometimes I think I'm having to do a lot, but I'm in the same environment, I'm either at the clinic or I'm at the farm. So same environment and the same variables most of the time, so I can kind of like some of that can go to autopilot. But yeah, going to new and different places and all that planning, that's a
yeah.
lot of extra effort.
And I think, the onus in terms of the education piece, I think, I'm part of a research and policy unit as well, trying to influence government and policy in this space is also, say, the NDIS model, for example, having a line item that you can actually add in for this specific work. I think social workers only just got recognized as their own
Oh,
line item.
really?
Yeah, I think it had to be under other therapy or something.
oh,
So it's the public health and even private health domain. Yeah, the theory that we're talking about and the real frontline stuff. There's this
Mm.
slow kind of
Oh,
um,
yeah.
transition, but I think naturally the work with more people working in this space, I think the pressure to to support practitioners to keep doing the work,
Mm.
because the change has to happen. And yeah, so I'll
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
yeah.
Even just the demand, like you probably have found, like the demand that participants are looking for something different. They just, there's going to be that group of participants forever who are just not going to be suitable for traditional therapies. Like they're just not. And like I'm getting them I'm really lucky I can handpick from the clinic. So, we've got multiple clinicians at the clinic. So if someone gets a client that's not working, we can look at their suitability to move them to farm appointments. And that's been quite successful for us because we've got that first step, of like it's typically I don't have new clients that we don't know out here. But yeah, when you get those guys that are the right fit, they just excel. Like they just excel. And that's not going to be the case for everyone, obviously, like not everybody's going to be the right fit for adventure or for farm stuff or whatever. But there is definitely, like, we see huge demand. Like, so surely these bodies are gonna have to catch up to some extent.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I'll have to pick your brain about the farm stuff, because I think it's been coming on my radar too, around having a location that is set up and you can go to, rather than but I'm sure that's a whole other podcast, I think, is talking about.
I'm thinking about getting some baby goats.
Oh, nice.
So we're probably going to have to do a podcast if I get some baby goats.
Yes, absolutely.
They're just very funny.
They're so funny.
They're so ridiculous.
So
they're so ridiculous. And I've always been like, no, Sam, don't buy goats. Like, you're being silly, But I don't know. I
support that. I would fully support that decision.
Very funny, hilarious animals with big personalities make great therapy animals.
Yeah.
So, maybe because I'm doing a little bit more farm stuff, like the kids, they're a bit more, even just because I used to just go, all right, we can be outside with the horses or inside with the dogs because I've got 2 spaces. And now it's getting a lot more like, just generally outside, generally finding something to do, and so I'm finding that's a little bit more that's working nicely. I've got chickens as well, so we got a few little spaces that we can go around. But like I found a snake in the chicken coop, a brown snake, last year or very early this year. I can't remember, but I wasn't with a client, so that was really good. But yeah, it's very eye-opening. And I mean, I find snakes around, but they're usually pythons or tree snakes. But this was a massive eastern brown snake. And I was like, great, now I'm going to die.
Fright of my life. Yeah.
I literally started to cry immediately. I was like, I didn't handle it well. I was like, everything I love is going to die by this snake.
That's so awesome with the because we'd call that place-based in the adventure therapy world. You have a hardtop place-based experience, so as opposed to journey-based. And
what does that mean?
Well, place-based, you select a place that you are essentially setting up a base camp, and you have your experiences within that container. You might go out for little adventures, like in your context, you're saying, you might choose to go out to the horses, you might go pet the little goats. Or
future goats.
Whereas a lot of the stuff that I've explained in this podcast is journey based, so we're heading out to a location. But there's actually really great literature around that having a ritual, like a sacred space, like a container like that, that people come back to, And that also fits well with the trauma literature in establishing safety because it's predictable. So,
Interesting.
and so it is interesting because I work a lot with adolescents, so that risk taking and that journey stuff works really well. But I don't know your client base and who you work with, but there's definitely some strengths with having a container space that is predictable and set up that people can keep returning back to.
So that's very interesting, Josh, because probably the timeline of how long I've had kids coming here, and like how, frequently and things like that with, the kids I've got now. So I take kids about sort of 8-9 years up for farm stuff, because the younger kids, I can't keep them alive, like they're just going to do whatever they want. And it's too stressful for me to be like, okay, so I just need to go in the chicken coop first, make sure that snake's not in there. So like, like things, I feel like they would need too much. I wouldn't be able to be like non-directive with them. I would have to direct a lot, because otherwise they're going to die because of all these risks that are millions of ways you can die right now on this farm, So that's where I came. Like I'd prefer to have them in the clinic where I can be quite non-directive in that space, because they're not going to get hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't work with under 12s basically, or like, I might work with 9 or 10, but that's, really on the cusp. So I think there's probably, there's I'm sure with more conversations, I think there's, it just makes sense, that would be appropriate.
The timeline that we're sort of at, I think these kids that I am seeing, the ones I'm seeing now, I think that they would be at that kind of point of like getting like, this is very familiar now, and we can do different things. Like maybe there's the space has opened up a little bit to them, like we can be a bit more. I got a big dam, and we can go down to the dam and see. I'm pretty sure there's a turtle in there. I'm pretty sure I've seen a turtle in there.
Yeah.
So we go down there. I'm like, I really want to see if I can see the turtle.
Turtle
so
spotting.
Go and see if we can see the turtle and stuff like that, So maybe that makes sense, that that being in that safe space and then feeling like they can take more risks, maybe with different activities and things like that, because we have got this like safe person and safe space, and then we can branch out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about your farm setup and how that space develops. I think, there's so much.
A lot of trying to get kids to do my chores, Josh.
Yes.
So
that's, it's the acceptable way back to child labor. No.
Well, I'm like, listen here, someone's got to pick all this horse shit up. So many hands makes light work. Let's go, guys. Do a school holidays program and just get like a heap of stuff done.
Yeah, I mean, jokes aside, but it was what we were speaking to really early on in the piece around the the young person or the adult or whoever it is we're working with. It's not just focused on them. They're doing something that's contributing, and I think that as much as it is like shoveling horse shit, is that sense of usefulness, and I really see that in young people. They they'll be the first to try and get around to the back of the car to start pulling stuff out of my car. And I'm like, I love the enthusiasm. This is how we do it. But they want to show that they're capable. And so I think having a farm setup would be, there's so many opportunities for that. But I can imagine you have to be pretty select with who you're working with in that space, given that there's probably so many. Yeah.
And as I'm figuring it out as well, like, so what is going to work here, and what types of things are these kids, what drives them? Like, it can't just be what drives me. It's got to be what drives them. And I'm finding having, like sort of different sorts of activities and spaces set up, because some of them are very like husbandry, like we want to they want to do things to look after the animals. And I'm like, great, well, I've got heaps of shit we can do to look after the animals. That'd be great. Like, wonderful. Whereas some of them, they're, inside sitting on the couch chatting about stuff, playing with the dogs, and some of them I can let the dogs out at the same time. And, we've got, then it's the full experience, like dogs and chickens and horses and stuff everywhere. Which is, but that's not right for every kid. Like some kids would be distracted and overwhelmed. And then like I've got one teenager who used to be, we brought her out here because she was so difficult. But now she's not that anymore. And I'm having to, like, was sort of planning something for her session, but then she'd show up and she doesn't need that anymore. She just wants to talk. And so she actually needs to go back inside where she feels like I'm fully engaged and focused on her. And, because she has this love of animals and things like that. And that stuff was really useful, like that, doing something useful thing. She was not in a good way when she came here first, so, but I need to keep changing with that. So for me, having, multiple different spaces and activities and things like that I can do, but it's a lot of mental energy. Like it's a lot of trying to figure out who needs what or would benefit from what. And it's some trial and error too of like, what's going to work here. And I do get, like logistically, if I've committed to, well, I've got these horses in this space ready for this thing, but then that kid that's not right for them. They don't want to do that or whatever. Have I got horses somewhere or dogs out, or, I need to lock dogs up so we can do something different, or I need to make sure these horses have got food and water, and they're safely contained, and all these different sorts of things that, can make it, more difficult. And like you said, like we don't get paid any more money. Like it's not, I don't get paid. I was thinking like, I need to get paid for like half an hour before this person's session for all this, like
just setting up.
It's so much setup. There's so much setup. It's really different to being in the clinic and the kids just come in one after the other and you just print out a different worksheet or whatever. Like it's,
No, I really think that's a really important piece is, it's great to talk about the passion, the change and that, but, I think that's a really practical element to make it sustainable. So I'm hoping that, the value in that work will be reflected in the remuneration, but, it will probably take some time, but if we've got any change makers or policy makers listening to this, please
reach out.
But I'm so glad we got to have this chat today, and I'm feeling inspired particularly about your farm practice, because I think there's a lot of power in the repetition. I have noticed that it has gotten easier. When I first started doing the therapy dog adventures, I was just like, wow, I'm already tired trying to run the other stuff, and then adding a dog element into that therapeutic practice, I'm like, wow, I've completely lost the plot. What am I doing?
Everyone says that though, Josh. Like everyone says that. Like
overwhelming in the beginning.
Overwhelming. It is so overwhelming in the beginning, and we try and warn people, but I think, and it's great. Like I don't want people to not do it because they think it's going to be hard, because it's only, you get into the flow of it, like you really get into the groove with it. And it is worth it. And even though, we do need to have these discussions about getting paid properly and stuff like that. It's obviously a bigger discussion to have, but it makes my life easier because it makes my job easier because my outcomes are better. So, for me, like that really drives me, and that, I'll have a couple of great sessions and just be like, sweet, like, hell yeah. Like these are kids that, every other therapist they have has fired them, or, they won't go anywhere else or whatever. And then you get a bit of progress and you're like, sick, like it's worth it. That half an hour of setup is so worth it. But again, like you say, it's like you're being driven by passion, and we've all got, the same bills to pay and that sort of stuff. But lots of people say it is overwhelming when they get started because they've got that extra thing to think about, which it is.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Josh, for popping on.
Yeah, no, you're both welcome. Thanks so much for having me, Sam and Max.
Great chat.
Really, really good. There's lots of threads there that I would have loved to have picked apart.
Never enough time, hey?
Yeah. No, it's really good because I wasn't sure what to expect coming in to the podcast, because we've really been building this as we've been going, and we're all busy, so this is the first chance I've really had to sit down and unpack it. So I'm really excited. It sort of reinvigorated me a bit more too about this work, and that it's okay to feel a bit overwhelmed with all the moving parts that is
absolutely
this work. So thanks so much for having me on today, and you'll be seeing Twiggy's videos coming through.
Oh, looking forward to that.
And Myrtle's reassessment stuff.
Very exciting.
Yeah, the little weasels will
Thanks, Josh.
No worries. All right.
See you, Josh.
No problem. See everyone.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you're interested in studying with Therapy Dogs Australia, or you have a few more questions before deciding, please get in touch with us by emailing courses@therapydog.com.au or visiting our website at www.therapydog.com.au for more information and FAQs.